This podcast is brought to you by the Prospect Research Institute, where researchers come to learn, innovate, and connect.
The ability to use AI to effectively match our donor and prospect names to all sorts of data on a very large scale. At Willamette, we're using this for news alerts and wealth events and job changes.
Welcome to Prospect Research Chat Bites, a podcast by and for prospect research professionals. I'm Jennifer Filla. Today, I'm talking with Jon Garrow, a fundraiser currently serving as Director of Prospect Development at Willamette University. He's also a library evangelist if you care to ask him about it. Hello, Jon. Thank you for joining me today on Chat Bites.
Hi, Jen. It's really wonderful to be with you today.
You and I have talked a few times and have known each other over the years through APRA and conferences. And I read an article you wrote. I was cleaning out my office because I had moved house. And there it was, a connections article, APRA Connections, and it was on capacity ratings. Super smart, just like you, of course. And now we have all these new products coming out, and I'm curious your thoughts on AI and capacity ratings and other ratings and the ways in which we do our work. But first, I'm hoping that you might be willing to share a little bit about your career. How did you end up in prospect research and where are you now?
Absolutely. Like many of us, I began my career with a liberal arts degree and then found myself working at a small organization where part of my work was managing the annual fund. So I had a goal to meet with the mail and the email and other stuff. And I began to recognize certain donor names, certain job titles and companies and zip codes that gave me an idea of who could be upgraded to meet that goal, who maybe should go into, we didn't even have portfolios, but who might our vice president meet with to ask them personally for a large gift. And then eventually we started to do some major and plan giving work and a small campaign. And then we had a board member in financial services who gave us access to Wealth Engine for a bit. And then, the world opened up. And from there, I chose to specialize my career in prospect development, going into higher education and then into healthcare and other things since then. But here we are.
Well, you haven't mentioned anything about libraries. Tell me how libraries fit into your career.
Perhaps like you, a lifelong fan of libraries. I have many great memories as a child of going to the Central Library in Portland. But my real passion and deeper understanding of what libraries are began when my husband and I moved across the country to live in New York. And we didn't know a soul, but we did live across the street from a wonderful urban library. So I was working remotely and, knew no one. So that was a place that I could go. But also, anyone could go for free all the time to access the world of information. And, it's warm and safe. And there was programming, and I got to meet people. So I really began to understand it more as a real place of democracy and a place that everyone can belong to. And then professionally, I also got involved in the library, serving on the foundation board and raising money. And we also managed an endowment. So that's something I learned more about. We went through a significant merger with another library foundation. And so I learned a lot about that. And then I also led a planned giving campaign and did some solicitations myself. So it was one of those really wonderful places where my passion for libraries and my volunteer work really has influenced my other professional work in a way that I had never really imagined I'd have the opportunity to do.
What a beautiful story, because you got to be in the position as a volunteer fundraiser, really understanding the human part of fundraising in a visceral way, I'm sure, if you're talking about mergers and oh my.
Yeah, and I still volunteer with my local library back in Oregon, but these days just shelving books mostly.
The fun stuff. What are people reading?
I learned so much through shelving books about what people enjoy reading, a lot in terms of genre fiction. So there are so many types of murder mysteries, like knitting murder mysteries and cat murder mysteries. Of course, library murder mysteries. They're just these huge series that people read a lot. I can tell by the state of the covers.
That's wild. There's this subculture going on.
Yeah, and I think there's at least one prospect development murder mystery out there.
There is one book. We know that author. I can't remember her name right now, but
Yeah.
well, that seeing patterns, even in shelving books, brings us right into capacity ratings, believe it or not, because I was trying to come up with a good analogy for capacity ratings and the data challenges and how AI might fit into that or not. And the best thing I could come up with was Swiss cheese, because the holes are never in the same place and there are a lot of holes. I'm curious how you, as a user, as a prospect development professional, how do you see AI improving on those data holes, the missing data pieces, and especially in the ways in which they're different for each prospect and refuse us that consistency that we want so much? We'd love it if every prospect could be rated exactly the same way, but it doesn't seem to work that way. How do you see AI playing in the field?
Yeah, I wish I could expand on your cheese analogy, which I really like, but I've not found a good way to do that yet. What I have seen is that these models built by artificial intelligence have enabled some of our vendors to get us to the next level of estimation of wealth and capacity. So before, we as individuals or an algorithm would gather up a few pieces of data, whether it's philanthropic giving elsewhere or real estate or income, and then choose one formula or methodology and make an overall guess about wealth and capacity. Today, the models developed with I believe using some new sources of data, are good enough to just say it's probably X net worth for this person. So I just think it's really a different paradigm of what we can guess about a prospect. And it's, of course, much more flat. We don't see based on this, this, and this, I'm guessing this about this prospect. But it's so precise. And I think it's transformational. It gets us beyond the inflated wealth of an expensive city, and it cuts through the noise of a flashy lifestyle or people with a giant house and a very giant mortgage, who cannot give a major gift, but we notice them more than the millionaire next door. So it's that accumulated wealth, the net worth, that really makes a major plan gift possible. These AI models are a very exciting way of looking at our prospects that I think is much more direct to what we're looking for in prospect development.
I agree. I think it's a change, a big change, a big shift in our field that we are living through. And it's almost difficult to see because it's been changing slowly for years now, but we're hitting this point where AI is claiming that they can be more precise. It's a black box because they're going out to these huge data sets that they cannot give us the data back because of the data laws, but they can process and run their algorithms on top of these vast troves of data, which sounds exciting and all of that. But I'm curious, what makes you feel confident that they're correct? Have you done anything anecdotally in your work to say, oh, wow, they've really nailed it 5 times out of 10 or 9 times out of 10 or whatever it is? What makes you confident?
Well, that's really the challenge, is that there's very few cases where we can validate that kind of data, because it's the kind of thing that we never truly know about a prospect. What are their liabilities? In very rare cases, we do get an estimate from a donor of their net worth when we're talking about an estate gift. And that is a very special case. So in those cases, when we get that, we do, of course, compare to the data we're getting from vendors to see how that lines up. What's been interesting is I've been using these AI models for at least 5, maybe 6 years now, and I've been seeding files with some people who I know pretty well, in particular those who own private companies. In one case, a private company that does wealth screening. That prospect has a pretty good idea of the value of that company, and that was not reflected in the net worth estimate that came back. So that was quite interesting to see where that illiquid wealth or future wealth is not reflected necessarily. So what I've seen anecdotally is some gap on the higher end of wealth not reflected in the net worth score. A consistent challenge we also have is these scores have been based on a household. So when we have adult children living with parents, we're getting data back for the household that we have to parse through to see, is this really that person's wealth or net worth, or is that their parents who they're living with? So that is a consistent thing to look through. But we have seen, aside from that higher end of wealth, we're missing pretty good quality on the lower end mid-range of wealth.
Okay, which is what we see with wealth screenings as well. They're missing the very high net worth because it's not quantifiable. if people don't want to make their wealth known. And when you have so much wealth, there's only so many public pieces of things you're going to own. There's just a limit to how many houses one person might have, I suppose.
One thing I've seen also is in the Northwest in particular, we have more people who can be quite wealthy living in a zip code or a part of the state that is not wealthy. So those are still a bit of a challenge for the models to identify.
But you're seeing or feeling based on results that at least it's better quality. We're stepping up from strictly visible assets found in a wealth screening to a little more precise values.
Yeah, we're not missing the prospects, which is key.
Aha. Okay. That makes sense. So you're missing fewer prospects than you had previously.
Right. And that's the big value that we're seeing in this kind of net worth data, is that the net worth data might not be 100% accurate in our estimation, but we're at least catching more prospects, which is a pretty direct line to revenue for us and mission support.
That's excellent. That is a big value. We're always so focused on capacity ratings, I think. There's just this interest. Am I doing it wrong? A lot of FOMO out there. Are they doing it somehow that there's a secret I don't know because I'm not finding these values and all that kind of stuff? But really, capacity ratings are just one rating. And I'm curious, given your wealth of experience in the field, have you had the opportunity to have, or do you have like a success story where you've been able to use multiple different kinds of ratings or pieces of data as opposed to just relying on capacity?
Definitely. Inclination and likelihood are some of the most important factors I think we can add in. Anyone who can afford it, I think, ought to be looking at some kind of predictive model for, who is likely to say yes if you ask them for a major gift. Improving your success rate with your major gifts team is really the best way you can increase fundraising. Finding more capacity for the pool is a pretty indirect and long-term way of doing that. So I think that's the first thing that I would encourage anyone to do. Regardless of wealth, not everyone's interested in giving a large gift, and not necessarily to your organization. Another thing we've done at Willamette is to combine this net worth data along with affinity and data on prospects who likely have no heirs to come up with a really strong prospect pool for 7-figure and 8-figure estate gifts. That's quite a rare thing for someone to leave all or most of their estate to one organization, but it does happen. It happens at Willamette, and I'm sure other organizations. So if we can inspire just a few more of them each year, it can make a giant difference for our fundraising. And that's a really interesting group to think about for how do we cultivate long-term those people who might be able to do that. And it goes back to that millionaire next door. It's the people who have lived in the same house for 25 years or more. They may not be flashy or have wealth indicators that we could find, but they've accumulated millions of dollars, perhaps through inheritance over the years, and they don't have a plan for it yet. Or the plan might be your organization and you haven't asked them about it yet. So those can be really incredible gifts to identify.
What a wonderful niche list to create. How was that received? Did you get buy-in right away? Like, yes, we want these people. We recognize it's a long-term approach, but it's big dollars.
Well, it helps that we had some history of that kind of gift at Willamette. So we could say, like, remember this woman from last year and that incredible gift she left? And we didn't expect it at all. What if we could get 5 more of those this year? It was some number in the low hundreds. I've got this group who I think could all do that kind of gift if you ask them. So we had a great plan giving team who was willing to take on that list, prioritize them, and just start working it and seeing what came of it. And we got the gifts. So it's been very
Wow.
well received.
Oh my gosh, they came in. That's
Yeah.
incredible. Oh, that's a beautiful thing. That is a wonderful success story. Thank you for sharing. I love hearing that. Before I let you go, I'm wondering if there are other ways that you see AI emerging successfully in this prospect research space.
Well, I'm so glad you asked, because we do always love capacity, but there are other things that I'm using and loving right now. So one area I'm looking at especially is the ability to use AI to effectively match our donor and prospect names to all sorts of data on a very large scale. At Willamette, we're using this for news alerts and wealth events and job changes. Our vendors can match all of those things pretty well for us for all of our alumni and our donors. So we're getting a lot of engagement data and driving engagement activity through things like congratulatory notes. We have an auto pen there's like smoke coming out of it these days. It's running day and night. And we're featuring alumni on social media for who's starting a company, who's won an award from their local organization, who's just got private equity investment in their company. And, we don't have time to identify all these things manually or setting up a news alert on all 50,000 of our alumni, but we can do a lot with, AI matching all of these things. So that's, to me, I think there's a new bar being set for that kind of data. Just, I want everything all the time, every day. So that's really what I'm excited about.
Would you feel comfortable sharing the vendors that you're familiar with?
Of course. So we are using a company called Alma Connect that is really interesting for news alerts, and another called Identified that is doing terrific work on wealth events, whether it's company formation or in private equity or venture capital investments. And they are tiptoeing toward doing the same for spouses, which is really exciting. That's another half of the wealth and philanthropy equation for us that we don't always know about.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for sharing today.
You're so welcome. It's been a treat.
That was Jon Garrow, a fundraiser currently serving as Director of Prospect Development at Willamette University. He's also a library evangelist if you care to ask him about it. Did you catch what Jon said about the value of AI in fundraising research? By using a much larger set of data, AI is raising the level of accuracy in its ratings, and this in turn is uncovering more and better prospects. The prospects that were missed by more traditional prospecting methods. But what I really enjoyed learning from Jon today was how AI-powered tools are doing this way beyond just ratings. Jon is using AI-powered tools to match things like news articles and wealth events to the entire database. As he mentioned to me later, it's a matter of scale. So, no worries, research professionals, your jobs are safe. You just need to get used to using some new tools. And hey, if you enjoyed my conversation with Jon today, you need to come to the masterclass on the same topic on October 13th, 2023, or purchase the replay. Get ready for some robust discussion. Visit www.prospectresearchinstitute.org/events for more information.